Now we'll continue forward from the place we left. We were executing the tests together in the testng.xml file. In this XML file, I put all the tests together and I could execute them in batch. Fine. Now there is one more important, a very important concept of data provider in Testng. Data provider helps you to execute one single test with multiple sets of data. Okay, I'll just create a new class over here. Right, and let's name it book ticket. Can somebody give the class link to Anil? I think I have him in. So in this I'll make a test case, that is @test public void book ticket. Fine. Okay, now what all information, what all data you need to book a ticket? Okay, you need the date, right? You need from station to station, name of the passenger, okay, and credit card number. Suppose this is my test data, right? Now in this I will write some Selenium code which will go to the website and it will book the ticket. Fine, right? But suppose I want to book more than one tickets. Forget about the website which I am talking about right now. Maybe any website, an airline website or an Indian Railways website, whatever be the website, right? I need to book more than one tickets. Okay, so will I execute the test again and again by right clicking on it, run as, then again right click, run as? No, we don't do like that. Okay, what we do is that we keep the test data inside a two-dimensional object array. This is the object array, and we make an object array and we put everything in an object array, in a two-dimensional object array. Two-dimensional object array means an array which has got rows as well as columns. Fine. The rows have indexes like 0, 1, 2. Columns also have the index numbers associated with them. Fine. Okay. And inside the cells we keep data. Now out here in the two-dimensional object array, this kind of structure has a relevance. Okay. The number of rows you have in this two-dimensional object array is equal to the total number of times you want to repeat the test data. Okay, and number of columns are equal to the number of parameters in the test data. For example, username, password, email ID, date, to, from, name, credit card number. So the number of columns, which is this thing over here, will signify the amount of data you have with you. Okay, and number of rows will signify the number of times you want to run a single test. Okay, and we keep the complete data in one particular two-dimensional object array, and that is done with the help of an annotation known as @data provider in Testng. Okay, you write here public void, public object get data. Now what do you mean by object over here? Right, object is a two-dimensional array. which I have made, right? This function is returning you a two-dimensional object array. Now, why object array? What is an object array? Okay, let's see that in one of the examples. Like, I'll make a new class called, say, temp.java. Now suppose I have an array. In Java, I have an array. How do you declare an array? You declare an array like this in Java. Int I brackets equals to new int. And I'll write 5. That means the capacity of this array is 5. It can hold 5 things inside it. Okay. But the problem is that this is an integer array. It can only store integers. I can write I 0 equals to 28, but I cannot write I 1 equals to some string. This will throw an error. Okay, this will directly throw an error. Fine. Now, out here, what to do? If I want to construct an array which can hold multiple types of data, then you have to make an array of an internal class known as object class. You can write object O equals to new object and put 5 over here, and you simply write O0 equals to 12, O1 equals to hello, O2 equals to some number, or a boolean as well. I can write true. Fine. So in this object array, I can put multiple types of data. Fine. Okay. So that's why we use the object array in our data provider, so that in the end, in this will be a two-dimensional object array. I can put strings into it. I can put integers, boolean, but generally we put only strings, right? We keep the data as a string. Fine. Now, in this, suppose I make a two-dimensional object array like this. I write object array O equals to new object array. Now, I will have to give the number of rows and columns like this. Rows, columns, right? You'll have to give the number of rows and columns which you want in this two-dimensional object array. Okay. Now suppose I write number of rows are 3 and number of columns are how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 types of data we have. Date, from, to, name. So number of columns will be 5. 3 means that I will be repeating my test case 3 times. Number of rows, they represent how many times you want to repeat the test case, and number of columns, they represent number of parameters in your test. Fine. So you write over here O 0 0. You fill the first row, right? O 0 0 equals to, say, you put the date 11/11/2013, suppose, right? This is then O 0 1. Fine. In this, from where do you want to travel? Okay, say I want to travel from London, then O 0 2. Third parameter, where do you want to travel? Say Moscow. Fine. What's your name? Say O0 3, say Tom. Okay, and the credit card number, right? That is 0. 4 is, we generally, instead of putting in an integer, we keep everything in a string. Okay, because all these values are later read from an Excel file or an XML file, and when a number is read from a file, it is read as a string, right? So this is how you can fill your first row. Now after first row, you can fill in the second row. Okay, I'll just copy this and paste this here and just change some data like 01 01 2013. I want to fly from Delhi to Dubai. Fine. Sheesh, and some number, right? Similarly, I can also keep the third row. This is the second row, so I have to keep one over here, right? And you keep the third row. Hold on. Right, 0104 2013, flying from Tokyo to, and some number, credit card number, and in the end I'll write return O, the two-dimensional object I am returning, right? So it's got 3 rows, and 3 rows has each of the 3 rows, it's got a different set of data associated with it. Fine. And now I want to run this test as many times as the number of rows, and I need to pass on the parameters as well. Okay, so to do so, you have to just a minute. Right. Okay. The first thing which you need to do is that you need to tell the test case that the data provider for this test is get data. This function get data is the data provider. That means the data for this test is coming from here. Okay. Later on in your data provider, we will not hard code the data. We'll keep it in an Excel file or an XML file and read it from there. Okay. Now, what all data you want? You want all this data. So the first thing which will be coming is the date. Fine. So you provide input parameter called date. Second thing is from, third thing is to, then name, and then phone. So you provide all those parameters from, to, name, phone. Okay. So the number of parameters inside the function should be equal to number of columns. Please remember, this is important. Okay. Sometimes people miss out one of the things and Testng throws an error. The number of input parameters in this test should be equal to total number of columns, right? Is the data type string or date type? It's string. I've kept everything string. Generally, I'm keeping everything string because in the end, if you read it from the Excel file as well, it will come as a string. Later on, we'll be reading it from the Excel file. If you read a number from an Excel file, it comes as a string. Okay. Now, the point to note out here is that the number of parameters in this test should be equal to number of columns. Okay, right? Now I'll just write over here system.out.println date plus from plus 2, I'll print everything plus name plus phone. Okay, now if I run this book ticket.java, I hope everything is fine, right? If I run this, right click on this, run as testng test. Hold on. You see that this test executes 3 times with different sets of data. That's it. Okay, you don't have to do anything else. You just have to have the configuration correct. Testng as a tool, it will go inside the test. It will read that the data provider is get data. It will go into the get data. Inside get data, Testng will see, fine, there is an object array whose number of rows are 3, number of columns are 5. So automatically it understands I need to call the test 3 times. Okay, and it creates this 2-dimensional object array over here, right? And Testng automatically calls the book ticket function 3 times. First it provides this set of data, then the next one, and then the next one. Okay, so this is quite important, data provider. And suppose if I miss one of the parameters here, I miss the phone number. Now my function accepts 4 parameters, but the 2-dimensional object array says that there are 5. And if I run the test now, I have removed phone. If I run it, you'll see that you'll actually get an error. The error says that the data provider is trying to pass 5 parameters, but the method test cases dot book tickets, this takes 4. Okay, so you have to be careful. If you are providing 5, then you have to give in 5 as well. Now the question arises, if you have actually worked on practical projects, sometimes there is a lot of data involved. You have got, suppose, 50 text fields to be filled, 50. Okay, suppose you have got 50 text fields to be filled. Now the problem is, will I give 50 input parameters out here if there are 50 input fields to be filled in one test, right? Now that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all, giving 50 parameters. Tomorrow if one of the parameter changes or whatever happens, then it's gonna create a lot of confusion in the code. Okay, so I'll give you the solution for this problem. Okay, just remember that there is a problem out here that if the number of parameters in the test they increase like anything, right, then it really becomes very tough to manage. Okay, and there are ways. I'll discuss those ways later on as we proceed. Okay, now right, so this was about data provider. Fine. Okay, now I'll talk about Ant. Right, I hope I have covered most of the things. Like, just a minute, let me look at the topics. Yeah, let's start with Ant. Okay, let's look at Ant, what Ant is and how we can use Ant. Well, Ant is something which is basically a build and compile tool. Okay, for example, what is Eclipse? Eclipse is again a build and compile tool. It builds your project, it compiles it, and it executes it. Similarly, I can do everything from Ant as well. But the difference is Ant works through command prompt. Okay, it's got no user interface like Eclipse has got. There are very fancy buttons on Eclipse and all everything. Okay, but Ant has not got that. Right. that's something separate. Okay, I'm not talking about that right now, how to mingle this with Selenium and check it out for correct data or incorrect data. I'll take that as I proceed with the framework. When I take the framework, I'll tell you about the positive data, negative data, and all everything. I have not taken the data as of now. I just told you the functionality, how it works. Fine. Okay. So I was talking about Ant now. Right. Now, Ant is something which is like a build and compile tool. Right. It helps you to execute the tests through command prompt. Or suppose you are running the tests on Unix. There is no user interface. So you can use Ant over there. Okay. So to work with Ant, what do you need to do? First of all, you need to download Ant and configure it in your system. You just need to go to Google and type download Ant, Apache Ant binary distributions. And if you look at this zip file, you can download it. Okay. After downloading, just extract the zip file. In my PC, hold on. Yeah, in my PC, I've kept Ant over here. This is the location of Ant in my PC. Right? Now you copy the location. Okay. Copy the location and go to my computer properties. Fine. In Windows Server operating system, this kind of window opens up. In Windows 7 operating system, a bigger window will open up, but don't worry, on your window in Windows 7, on the left side or somewhere over here, you will see a link known as advanced settings. You need to go to the advanced settings. Right? Out here, click on environment variables. You need to set an environment variable. Okay. And I have already created it. Ant home, you need to create it in your machine. You click on the new button and type ant underscore home. Ant is not installed. It is not an exe. It needs to be configured in your system. Right? Just type ant home and give the path of ant which you have downloaded. Okay. Now after that, scroll down. You will have a variable called path. Right? This would be a predefined variable. You don't need to generate a new one. Okay. Go and edit this variable. Right? Go and edit the path variable and go to the end of the path variable. Hold on, I'll tell you, just a minute. Go to the end, put a semicolon, give the path of ant followed by bin. Okay, after putting the semicolon, give the path of ant followed by /bin. That means you need to give the path of bin folder of ant in the path variable. That's it. This is how you configure Ant. Now if you open command prompt, if your command prompt is already open, close it and restart it after configuring Ant. Ant is already there on my system, but I'll show you just like that. Now on this command prompt, you just have to type the tool, you just have to type the command Ant, and hold on. Some of you will get this message build.xml does not exist. And some of you will get a message regarding tools.jar file. Ant is unable to find a jar called tools.jar. Some of you might get that error. Okay. Now to overcome that tools.jar error, you basically, what Ant does is it tries to go inside Java folder, right? It tries to find tools.jar in JRE lib folder. but inside this tools.jar is not there. By default in JRE it is not there. This is one which I have copied in my machine. So what you need to do is that you need to go to JDK, and inside the library of JDK you have the tools.jar. Copy it from JDK library and put it inside JRE library and tries to find it inside JRE. Okay, so that's it. Now after that you type and you will get this error message that build.xml it is not existing. Build file build.xml does not exist. Well, what is build.xml? Build.xml is the heart of Ant. In that XML file we keep all the configurations, all the test configurations which are required. Fine. For example, I'll just take a build.xml and I'll show you. Right, this is build.xml. Fine, I have put it under the project directory, not inside the source folder, but under the project. Right. Now this is a XML configuration file. Okay. Now in case of Eclipse, how do you tell Eclipse where the jar files are lying? You right click on Eclipse, you go to the properties and go into the Java build path and you add the jars from here, right? Okay, but how do I tell Ant in command prompt where are the dependent jar files lying? Where are the Selenium jar files? Where are the POI API jar files? Okay, so I have to inform Ant about the jar files. So all that information is given through build.xml. Okay, again in Eclipse, if you look at Eclipse out here, we make it ourselves. I've taken an existing file, we make it ourselves. Right, I'll tell you what all commands are there inside it. Right, this is the path of the project, right? The Eclipse project. Now what Eclipse does is, inside the bin folder of Eclipse, I'll give you build.xml after the class. I'll give it to everybody. Inside the bin folder of Eclipse, you have the class files corresponding to every file. Eclipse stores all the class files in the bin folder. Now where will Ant store? So all that information is there in this build.xml file. Okay. If you look at this file, then these are the most important properties. Okay. These are the most important properties. It says that property name equals to ws.home, value equals to $base_dir. Now what does this mean? That means ws.home property. I have given a name. I can give any name. That's not a problem. Okay. But I've given this name. ws.home means workspace home. Right. Workspace home. The value is $base_dir. That means the directory in which build.xml is lying is your workspace home. That is the path of your project. Okay, this project build.xml is directly lying under the project, right? So this is your path of the project. ws.jars, it's having this path f drive jars. That means the location where you have kept all the jar files which are required to execute the project. Now when we work with Selenium, POI, we'll choose a location and we'll keep all the jar files there. POI API jar files, Selenium jar files and all those jar files we'll put at a common location and we'll give the location here. Right? Test.destination means the place where Ant will store all the class files, and test.source means the place where Ant will have the Java files. Now let's look at test.source. The value says $workspace home slash src. So see, these are Unix commands. ws.home dollar means this variable. That means under the project, okay, there's a folder called source. That is our source folder. And destination. Destination means the folder where all the class files will go. This is under the workspace under a folder called build. Right? So this folder will be made later on when we execute. Okay. ng result means where is the test ng results? It is in test output folder. This one which is available out here as well. Fine, this is the name of the folder, not path of the folder. Okay. Now, there are various targets in Ant, right? For example, there is a target called compile. Okay. Now, how do I work with this compile target? If you go to the place where this project is, or you go to the place where Ant is lying, right? That is, where is this project? Just a minute, it's in E drive. Okay, and you give E drive here, go to the location of the project. Now you write Ant. You will see the command coming up. Ant run will execute the test. Fine, that means everything is fine. Ant will run the test. Okay, now after this you give the command compile, the target compile. If you run this and compile, build failed, f:jars does not exist. Okay, this path is not existing. Hold on, what I'll do is I will give the path in my C drive jars. In C drive jars in my PC, I've kept all the jar files of Selenium and then the POI API jar files, Testng jar files, everything I've kept. So I'll give C drive jars and run this file. Sorry, you have to run it from here and compile, and this time it will compile. Okay, now if you refresh your project, you'll see a build folder generated. You had set a variable called test.destination. This told where the class files will go. This will go inside the build folder, and inside the build folder you will see the class files corresponding to all Java files, right? Similarly, there is a target. There is a target called clean. What it does, it deletes the directory test.destination. It will delete this build folder. If I go to the command prompt and type ant clean, and if I refresh this project, you will see the build directory has gone. Fine. So now I'll just give the target compile so that the project is compiled and the class files are made. Right. Now there is a target called run, which runs the project as per the file testng.xml. Testng.xml is our XML file in which I used for batch running. I will add one more test over here for ticket booking, which I just made. This test will execute more than once. Okay, this test has the class as testcases.bookTicket. So this test will run 4 times book ticket. Fine. So in Build.xml you have got, just a minute. Right. In Build.xml you have got the target run, which will run the project as per testng.xml file. Okay, now you go to command prompt and give the command and run. Make sure the compilation has been done. I guess compilation is done. Build folder is there, right? So you just write over here and run. So this will execute that project. You see all that output which you used to get in Eclipse, you get on this console, right? Total test runs 9, failures 0, skips 4. If you refresh this project, okay, if you refresh this project, you will see the test output folder, fine, and you have the index.html here. Open the index.html. This is your HTML report, and you'll get something like this. This is the report generated as per the older version of Testng, because in my jars, C drive jar, this is the location where I have told all the jar files are lying, right? I have the older version of Testng jar file out here. I'll give you this jar file. Okay, I'll give you this jar file later on. But these reports are as per the older version, right? Now these reports are again clumsy. These are not so good. Okay. To make better reports, we use Ant and we use XSLT reports. Okay. To generate XSLT reports, this is the target in this file. Okay. There are 2-3 steps to generate these XSLT reports. I'll tell you now. Fine. And listen carefully. The first thing is that to generate XSLT reports are better reports, right? You need to make sure that there is a package called XSLT. It should be there inside your source folder. Who has given this package XSLT, and there's a file testng results.xsl? This is given by the person who, or the entity which developed XSLT reports. They say that keep this XSL file inside this package under the source folder. This is the first step. The second step is there are few jar files which you require in order to make XSLT reports. I will give you those jar files at the end of the class, right? You need to keep those jar files in C drive jars. Okay, so these are the two steps. Firstly, you need this XSL, and secondly, you should have the jars. That's it. Now you take this target and go to command prompt and type the command and make XSLT reports. So XSLT reports would be formed, and if you refresh your project, you'll have the XSLT reports package over here. Inside it, you will have index.html. If you look at index.html, and don't open it in IE, open it in Mozilla or Chrome. Fine. If you open this out here, now this is a better report. Okay. If something had failed, it would have given something in red as well, right? You have individual test cases over here which you can look at. For example, the ticket booking test, it was executed 3 times, fine, and start time, end time, duration, everything is there in these reports, right? So these are better reports. Okay, and we look at them again when we practically implement. Okay, so till now I have just told you the overview, right? Till now I have just given you an overview what Testng is, what it's supposed to do, right? What are the various annotations, what are assertions, how do we run in batch, how do we run through Ant, how do we configure Ant, and how do we make the XSLT reports. Okay, now in some time I'll take up the framework and I'll implement the test cases in Testng, and you'll understand it in a better way, right? Before I do that, okay, many people, they make a bat file to make their life very easy. what they do is that bat file is like an exe file. You run that bat file and the project is executed. You don't need to open up Eclipse. Fine. It's very easy. All you need to do is that you need to open up a notepad, and in that notepad just give the commands which you gave on the command prompt. Okay. When I started the command prompt, the first thing was that I went to the location of this project in E drive, right? So this was the first command I gave, that is go to E drive and go to the location of the project in my E drive, right? And after that you gave the command and compile, run, and make, what was the target? Make XSLT reports, right? These are the commands which you gave, because you need to give these commands at the location of the project. Why? Because build.xml is lying at the location of the project. We deliberately keep the build.xml at the location of the project. Okay, if I save this notepad on the desktop and in double quotes I write project.bat, this file would be saved as a bat file. You must have seen a bat file earlier. Bat file looks like this. Fine. And if I double click on this bat file, the project will start executing. You see that? It executes and in the end makes the XSLT report as well. Right. Suppose in my project I refresh it and I delete the reports. I delete the reports folders, and now I go and run this bat. So automatically this command prompt will open and project will execute. So this is very handy. Okay, you just practically what we do, we just change the data in the Excel file and we run the bat file. That's it. When the project is stable, you open the Excel file, change the data, run the bat file, and the project executes. Fine. And you open up Eclipse. In Eclipse you will refresh the project. You'll see the reports generated under the project. Index.html, right? So this is about Testng. Fine.